Hello, and my name is Pete Rushmer, and I'm your host today of A Half Dozen Things podcast. A Half Dozen Things is a podcast for business owners just like you. Whether you're an underdog hungry for success, or you're already smashing it but want to continue to level up, we are here each week for you to get insight and learning from the very best in the business. No fluff, no BS, and no self-proclaimed gurus talking about how easy business or life is. The red lights roll in, and I'm joined today by Natalie Goodson, and her business is Robert J Goodson Limited, and they're insurance brokers that specialise particularly in the transport and fleet sector. They do a range of other businesses too, and we've actually just been having a meeting to discuss our insurance at Flagship. We've recently moved premises, as a lot of people have seen on our socials, and we need to make sure that we've got the right coverage in place for all the new equipment that we've bought and furniture and those kinds of things. I probably shouldn't say too much because it advertises to thieves, but hopefully there's not too many thieving people
You're
listening.
well protected, it's fine.
Brilliant. So I'm in safe hands. So Natalie, if it's okay, I know it's like that sort of cringe thing from when we first met at like BNI. So interestingly, Natalie and my relationship goes back a little way over the last few years. We met at BNI, which is a networking group in Peterborough, and we talked all things transport. I think I asked to speak to, I can't remember who I asked to speak to, but it was one of your clients, and you were like, I know them. And then we just sort of hit it off from there. But we've exhibited at Truckfest for the last few years and sort of shared a stand. Hopefully Truckfest aren't listening to that. But if they are, it's tough. It'll get us into trouble, sorry. We sort of do what we can to support each other. So it's fantastic to have you on the podcast, because I have been chasing you for a little while, actually, to be fair, and it's been hard to pin you down. So just for the benefit of the listeners, you're able to just tell them a bit more about the sort of stuff you do, where you're based, what the team are up to, and the type of businesses you work with, please.
Yeah, sure. Well, firstly, thank you for the invitation. Very kind of you. So as you said, we've been sort of keeping in touch for a few years since my BNI days. We're a local independent insurance brokerage in Peterborough, specialising in transport and travel pretty much nationwide to look after our customers. We've been going 54 years this month, which is quite an accolade.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you so much. Champagne next week.
Excellent.
And a big slice of cake, obviously. So travel nationwide, and our principal concern is always to make sure we offer good independent advice, and that's where our operation has sort of grown year on year. We're always happy to engage at any level, be it from an owner operator through to fleets, and obviously those transport managers and what have you that fall in between.
Absolutely, and I think it's important to note actually that certainly where people will go to listen to the podcast and pick up on their relationship with me will be in a lot of the transport manager forums on Facebook and that kind of thing. And Natalie actually sits in the back of the Fleet Geeks forum, and she's there to help and advise. And what I would say is a lot of the people listening will deal with smaller and newer operators, and when they're looking to get the right advice, what I would suggest is Natalie's really worth a chat, because totally impartial, will give you the right advice that you need, and I'm more than happy to have a conversation without whether there's any business to be done or not. There's always good quality support and advice, which you're going to find out during this podcast. So we've got a few questions for Natalie around how operators can reduce their insurance premiums. That's like a really important thing at the moment, particularly with costs rising everywhere else, with employment costs, with the cost of fuel and those kinds of things. And then we're going to talk a bit about best practice, one of my favourites. What does that look like? And sort of the biggest mistakes that we see operators make. So just to kick things off, Natalie, how can operators reduce their insurance premiums? Big question.
It is. It's like the golden ticket, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's a number of things that people can do to reduce their insurance premiums, but essentially insurers will always rate a risk based on claims costs. So if you are running one vehicle or 20 vehicles or 100 vehicles, the insurer will always look at claims costs. So essentially, it boils back down to risk management within the business. So the business needs to look at ensuring that they've got a good quality driver, make sure they've got a good CPC provider that can focus on any areas that could prove to be a problem within the business to try and rule out those regularly occurring issues. And then as a consequence, then hopefully the claims costs will reduce and in turn the insurance premiums are reduced. It's not only claims cost, it's also frequency that insurers look at. So if you're running 10 vehicles but you're having 40 claims a year, it doesn't matter whether it's a £500 wing mirror or not, you're high admin for an insurer, and then that becomes a problem. So insurers will just walk away because they don't want to necessarily be looking at dealing with those high claims entities. That said, you can look to not just reduce the risk within your business. You can put certain things in place. So obviously we've got the driver training, we've got driver assessments. So a lot of insurers will like to see that businesses are taking on board someone to do regular assessments, not just at induction stage, but actually as an ongoing thing. So if you were to try and carry out claims investigations following a loss, you might then decide that it's an appropriate time to go and sit with somebody, assess his driver trait or assess his driving ability, and just make sure that you're happy for him to be behind the wheel, because ultimately the vehicle's got your name on it, and he's representing your business. So you've got to make sure that your brand is protected as far as possible.
Brilliant. I think there's quite a lot to think about when it comes to insurance and that kind of thing. So as a broker, do operators tend to call you rather than straight to the insurer, and then you start to handle that claim process with them?
Personally, that's how we function as a business. So when you go to majority of brokers, that's what you're paying us for. Otherwise, you may as well go to Direct Line. Sorry for the free advertising there. But if you go to a broker, it's because you trust them with your business to give you best advice and ultimately to look after you. And the claim isn't just a claim for your own assets, so damage to your own vehicle or injury to an employee. It's also third party that you have to look at. And if all of a sudden someone's created a fictitious invoice where they're claiming for a car that wasn't even the car in the accident, you need someone to fight your corner. So we would always, request someone to submit the first notification of loss to ourselves, and then we would obviously look to work with insurer to get the best possible outcome to reduce costs and reduce delay as well, because delays can obviously bring about additional costs, which we can well do without.
Yeah, so one of the things we were talking about was actually how drawn out the process can sometimes be. So just to give people an idea, if they've not really sort of understood what the claim process is from start to finish, like, can they be a matter of weeks, or sometimes are they a matter of years? Like, what does it look like? So ideally we want a claim to be settled as quickly as possible. So if you're lucky enough to have windscreen cover, very few are, incidentally, so don't take that as that you're missing out on something. But if you have got a windscreen, yeah, sure, you'll go to an approved repairer, and it'll be put in, you'll pay your excess and your VAT, and it'll be done in a matter of days or weeks. But the majority of claims, especially, if there's no injury, you could hope to be settled within about 8 weeks as a reasonable time frame. Some a lot sooner, but things, especially when in transport at the moment, parts are a problem for most of the leading manufacturers. So the lead time, and they all seem to be super busy. Again, I think we've got this problem for not just recruiting into the transport, but also into the motor trade sector. Yeah. So I think they are struggling for mechanics or qualified mechanics. So all these things bring about delay, which is again a cost to the business. But if there is an injury to a third party, then these things can go on for literally years. Yeah. And quite often,
those injury claims, they've fallen out of your claims experience before they're even settled. So your claims experience is only really relevant to an insurer for 3 years. And after 3 years, if it was reserved at 50,000 and settles at £500,000, it's irrelevant because it's fallen out of your 3-year history. It does become something to be mindful of, that you could have a bad year this year, but the next 2 years can make up for it. It's not suddenly written off, but equally anything that remains outstanding for 2 or 3 years is going to stay with you for that time.
Got you. Sounds like quite a complex thing, really, and it's important.
Maybe I'm just bigging myself up.
I'll be honest, you've baffled my brain. So, but I think largely speaking, it's obviously with insurance. I guess the way I've always looked at it is, you never really know how good it is until you need it. It's exactly.
You never know how good your policy is until you've had a claim.
And that's where the trust's really important, isn't it? To be able to build trust with somebody, because you can just buy. It's not like, I can go into a shop and I can buy a pair of Nike trainers that are 150 quid, or I can buy a pair of Primark trainers for like £10. And you can see the quality difference.
Which ones are you wearing?
Somewhere in between today. Somewhere in between.
Okay.
They're JD Sports Special. They're nice. I've got a nice pair of white Adidas kicks today that are quite shiny. I think it's one of those, isn't it? You can kind of see the equality and the difference straight away. But with an insurance policy, you kind of got no idea until after the horse was bolted. Exactly.
You pay your premium, and as you say, it's a bit of a roulette. You just hope that you've got it right. Yeah. So advice is the most important thing, really.
Okay, cool. So I know I've asked about how do operators reduce the insurance premiums. How much of a different question? So the other question I'd written, and I don't know how similar the answer is going to be, when it comes to insurance, what does best practice look like? Okay, so it does sort of go over some of the highlights on how you reduce your premiums, but it all comes back to risk management. So best practice will obviously be to, if it's affordable within your business strategy and structure, to ensure that you have got regular driver training, to make sure that you're actually encouraging your drivers to be the best they can be. So a lot of the time it's actually to pay them bonuses, which in some customers find it kind of ironic that you're paying them to be a best driver when you're already paying them a serious salary. But these little incentives just keep them motivated. So is that like a non-damage bonus type thing?
Absolutely, and you can tie it into other things. So hours to make if they're not late, and so you might tie in 3 or 4 different good behaviours into a weekly benefit pot, and so for every week they work before Christmas, you give them an extra £5 or £10 a week for those weeks that they've ticked all those boxes.
Nice.
If they suddenly have a bump, or they're late in, or they've done something that falls against that structure, then the slate's wiped clean, so they don't lose out on the bonus before Christmas. But then you can start rebuilding it again. So if they have a bump in June, they can still potentially earn 6 months bonus to buy the missus or husband, whatever, a Christmas present. So these little things can really help. Just keep drivers motivated and engaged. With that, obviously cameras is a massive thing. A lot of operators automatically assume that they'll get discounts off their insurance for having cameras. Those days have gone. When it was new technology, 12, 15 years ago, then there were some financial incentives to actually have them fitted. But actually, the risk is very much reversed, where insurers are saying it will pay you, it will be beneficial to you to have good cameras installed. So it becomes your financial commitment to your business, and then as a consequence, hopefully, you'll have reduced claims costs, and then insurers will reward you with the reduced premiums.
Hi, it's Pete from Flagship Partners. We're really proud to sponsor a Half Dozen Things podcast. At Flagship Partners, we take road safety really seriously, and we're your road safety partnership. We help transport companies with compliance and training across their businesses, including first aid, driver CPC, and other transport management services. So if you're FORS accredited or you want to improve your operator compliance risk score, give Flagship Partners a call today. And my next question is a bit of a cheeky one. What's the biggest mistakes you've seen operators make?
Okay, well, obviously only in insurance perspective. I can't divulge anything else.
Pleading the Fifth Amendment on that one.
Probably one of the biggest mistakes is at renewal. So certainly big fleet operators, not so much single vehicle, 2-3 vehicle stuff, which is written on a no claims bonus basis. But when it comes down to a fleet where you've got a claims experience, do not go getting multiple alternative insurance brokers involved. It becomes a Dutch auction, and actually you'll find that some insurers that would have quoted on your business will just step away. So I would say always obviously engage with your holding broker, assuming you're happy to. If not, then get a letter of appointment out to someone else. But basically engage with your existing broker and put one other on. One other broker will give you the best chance to find an alternative. If you really, really push and put 2 on it, then 2 other max. But ultimately, holding broker and one other broker will give you the best possible outcome. I've been asked to go and quote on risks where I'm, I think, the 5th or 6th broker looking at it. Well, what am I going to get to that no one else has possibly found? And then you're clearly not working on or working with anyone that you have a massive amount of faith in, and then clearly it then comes back down to cost. And insurers want to have long-term relationships with their with the policy holders. They don't want it to be a 12-month and then it's lost. The other thing which kind of links into that is do not find yourself with 3 insurers in 3 years. It's not every insurer that looks at that as a negative, but if you're showing that you've got no loyalty, it can go against you. And if you've then had a bad year of claims, you could suddenly find that half a dozen, 8 or even 10 insurers suddenly say, I'm not quoting, it's had a terrible year, and it's had 3 insurers in 3 years. So you just reduce the pool that are going to be open. So
makes sense. How big is, for fleet operators, how big is the pool of insurance? I imagine that you've got all the household names in there, have you? And then are there a few sort of smaller, try-out insurers potentially that are just trying to, disruptors, I suppose. It's a bit like the banks, I suppose. You've got the high streets and then there's a few disruptors in place at the minute,
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. So there's probably a dozen main insurers that are on their game. There's a few other insurers that obviously come in, but quite often those new insurers don't always go the distance. They can be in to undercut everyone, take that premium income, but if they're not turning a profit, then it's only ever going to be short-lived. So ultimately, I would just say, just make sure you work with an insurer that's got a rating, a financial security rating, with AM Best or similar. That sometimes you have no choice. Sometimes you have to go with an insurer that hasn't got an insurance rating, because if you've had a torrid time on claims, you've got no option. But always try and go for an insurer that's got a good financial strength, so you've got the financial support in the event of claims.
Nice. So this probably makes me sound like a total dunce, and I'll go and sit and put the hat on and sit in the corner.
No, you don't have to.
Financial ratings on insurers, that's kind of a new thing on me, but I guess what that's telling you is that you're trusting an insurer. Is it that sort of trust that you have in the insurer? So you pay them that premium and it's giving you the trust that they're going to pay out in the case of a claim, right?
Exactly that. So they're holding a massive pool of money. So they hold everyone's money in a pool to pay out for those hopefully smaller losses. And if they've had a good year and it's been profitable, then hopefully your premiums won't have to go up as much. But the security is literally a case of saying, if they've got A-rated strength, you know that they're profitable, you know that they're strong, and they will hopefully be around tomorrow. If they haven't got a security rating, then it's questionable as to no one's actually been in and audited their books to know that they're financially strong. So you could find that you suddenly get an email at 9 o'clock in the morning and say, really sorry, but your insurer's gone bust, and with it the premium you paid.
Premiums.
So then you find yourself, that premium's gone and you've got to go looking for a new 12-month policy.
So without one, they could be any Tom, Dick or Harry, potentially.
Pretty much. There aren't there aren't too many of those about, I'll be honest with you. But if you're going to buy a policy, just if it's got a brand on it that you don't know, that you don't recognise, just look or ask the question and see who actually is the insurer that sits behind the product. Okay. And that just gives you that certainty and that reassurance that your money is going to be safe.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I'll give you an opportunity to drink your coffee. I'm going to share a little story a minute. Okay. I'm not sure I've shared this with you before, Natalie, but I had when I worked for Volvo, I had a customer, and I won't share obviously who it is, but they had an absolute. I think you may do. Okay, you may do. Okay. They had an absolute horror story where they'd got a Volvo that was on contract hire, and so they're paying monthly. So contract hire, they're paying monthly for the contract hire of the vehicle, but also the maintenance as well. And that vehicle had been driven by a agency driver, and the agency they had a relationship with, but there's a criteria that the driver 25. Needed to be 25 and all that sort of stuff, and the agency have changed the driver last minute without notifying the operator at the weekend.
I see it regularly.
And then the agency driver has gone out and driven that vehicle and smashed it up pretty bad, to the point of it needing to be written off, and the insurance company have just gone, the driver was uninsured, and so that vehicle was being paid for on a monthly basis. The maintenance for it wasn't going anywhere, literally for cost 2 years, something like that. And the operator were fortunate in that they were big enough to be able to stomach that, because once an operator gets to a certain point, that vehicle, if they've got 25, 30 vehicles, and I know there's not many operators, particularly with current overheads on fuel and employment costs and stuff like that, but they managed to sort of weather that. But you can't have many like that, and particularly for a smaller business, that could be catastrophic.
Absolutely, and it happens frequently. And this, again, it's kind of a best practice thing. If you can avoid using agency drivers, then do. Agency drivers statistically will have more claims, so it's one of those questions that a lot of insurers will want to know. But it's not an uncommon scenario. Also, sometimes agency drivers might send you a driver who has more than 6 points on his licence, and then that also becomes a referral criteria. So there's lots of potential, hiccups through going through agencies for recruitment. So I would always say try and make sure you've got a solid crew, and try and rely on agency as an emergency holiday sickness cover.
Backfill for holiday and sickness, absolutely. But have the relationships again, like you've got the broker for the insurance. You need the agency agreement as well. You need to have a good agency that you work with and have an agreement with. You need to have that trust. The one, you said that claim didn't get paid. I've had some similar situations where they have been paid. Not all. Again, it depends on the insurer. But I think it's absolutely paramount, if you are going to use agency drivers, that you do make sure you can evidence to the insurer that you gave them strict instructions to comply with the age of 25, the 2 years licence requirement on whichever classification of vehicle they're in, and also the points, because again, not every insurer has the same points requirement. Some might be over 3 points, some might be over 6, some might be over 10. But it's important that you make sure the agency doesn't send you anyone that conflicts with your insurance requirements. Otherwise, it's a real risk. Oh, that's really good advice for those listening. So to make sure that you've got clearly documented communications with that agency, and if they then didn't comply with that request, the likelihood of a payout is greater potentially.
Absolutely, because the insurer can obviously see that you've done everything you possibly can within your power to make sure that you were complicit with those endorsements on the policy. So again, it very much depends on the insurer. But when I have been able to demonstrate the strict instructions to the agency, we have been able to get an insurer to agree it, because it was very much out of their hands. And the same goes when you check your own driver's licences, be it every 3 months or 6 months. Make sure you keep a record of it, because then if you suddenly find a driver's acquired 6 points and not told you since you last checked, you can at least demonstrate that when you last checked, the driver was under the referral criteria, and 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, you can then see that that's when the points went on. But again, you're more likely to get insurers on side. You can say, when we last checked, this was the position.
Perfect. Great advice, thank you. I think just finally, just to put a point on the fact that a lot of the listeners will be transport managers, and many of those will be external transport managers, consultants. When we think about our own professional services insurance, we've just been through the process ourselves. What are the things that those professionals who offer services to transport operators, what do they need to think about with insuring themselves?
Okay, yeah. So the most important thing will be professional indemnity or professional negligence cover. You are essentially charging your operator a fee for the advice you're giving. So your customer needs to know that if you're giving bad advice or wrong advice for whatever reason, he's got some financial recompense should it be necessary. The limit you go for really depends on the size of the business that you're looking after. So just make sure that the limit you carry, be it £250,000, £500,000, £2 million worth of cover, is really representative of the size of the business that you're looking after. So if you're looking after businesses that are turning over 10 million quid, then probably a £250,000 compensation pot is not going to be sufficient. But if you are looking after the smaller one-man bands, 2 and 3 vehicle risks, then you might find that sort of limit is completely appropriate for the risk involved. And then the other thing is public liability. Make sure you've got public liability cover. You're working on third-party premises, so if you cause any damage or injury to anyone whilst you're on their site, you've got that cover and protection there. And then in addition to that, again, it comes whether there's any employees. But yeah, transport managers, the professional side is probably the key to make sure that they've got that personal protection over the advice they're giving.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. That's been a whistle-stop tour. We've done well on timing there, I think.
I thought we'd be talking for about 3.5 minutes. So.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah. So, well, there you go. Got plenty of great advice for us. Natalie, just finally to finish off, it's your opportunity to tell listeners if they wanted to come and engage with you around getting some advice, what's the best place to find you? Is it LinkedIn or giving you a call on the company website or phone number?
I'm available on most mediums. I think most people are these days, so it's whatever works for the individual. By all means, add me on LinkedIn or phone me at the office or email me, whatever. I can use all outlets or inlets.
There you go. So that's Natalie Goodson from Robert J Goodson Limited, who are insurance brokers based in Peterborough. Thank you very much, Natalie, and
thanks, Pete.
I hope people have found that insightful. And hopefully there's some really good advice there about getting the right advice for your insurance and to make sure that you're properly protected. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. Bye-bye. I really hope you loved today's episode, and if you did, please make sure you subscribe and listen out for future episodes too. Please do share it across your social media channels. We hope to reach more and help more people. If you want to find out more about me, my name's Pete Rushmer. You'll find me across any social media channel and my business Flagship Partners, and we're your partners in success across your business. Thank you. See you again soon.